What I will be talking tonight about is the senior mission trip to Costa Rica. So, as you all know, we left on Sunday night shortly after 11 o'clock. And we drove to Dallas to catch a flight to Fort Lauderdale, and then from there to San Jose. Upon arriving, we met the guy who was going to be our host, Diego. We got our luggage, and we went out to his car, where he made a startling discovery. He could not find his keys anywhere. He searched the entire car. No keys. He checked his pockets over and over and over. No keys. We left to go do some stuff, and when we came back, he had found them. Apparently, and right before we left, we prayed that we would find them. Apparently, he had left them in the car door. Just sitting there. Anybody could have taken them, and somebody did take them. And shortly after we prayed and we had left, they walked by, and Diego asked them if they had seen the car keys. And they said, "Oh, they're right here." So, this is on the way to the plane in Dallas. It's early in the morning, and all of us are slightly tired. And now we are in Costa Rica. Pura vida means pure life in Spanish. The first day that we get there, Sunday, we go to the school where they want to build this sanctuary, and I'm thinking, we're just going to drop off some of the luggage here, and then we're going to go to Diego's house and get some rest. Nope, we start working. Right here, Mr. Anderson is holding the pipes for me as I cut them with a grinder. The frame was going to be made out of those metal pipes, and the pillars were PVC pipes. So, when we got the frame set up, we discovered that if you push on one pole, the next pole over is going to fall over. So we had to figure out some way to get this thing to stay up. And that's when Mr. Anderson and I realized something. We had gone there thinking they're going to have all the materials ready. All we have to do is just put them together, paint it, train the people, we're good. They didn't have any materials, almost none. Just the metal pipes, and that was it. The pillars had to be cut down to length, and the pipes, we had to sort through them to figure out which ones would go where. Some of them had lips on them, that way they could fit over the next pipe, and those were for the legs, Trying to find the proper materials for it was not easy. We went to different businesses, asking them if they had the type of stuff we needed, and each time it was a no. We went to multiple paint shops, asking them if they had bronze-colored paint. Each time it was a no. So we settled for a darker brown. And then we finally figured out a way to keep that frame up. We tied it together. Just crisscrossed ropes all over it. And it actually held. But in between the legs, the pipes would sag down. Even though we put those ropes as tight as we could, they just would not stay up. These are the walls that we used. A thin type of plastic that we had to paint with black primer before they could be spray painted with the gold paint. And then we figured out a solution for those saggy pipes. We welded them. Mr. Anderson did most of them. I tried my hand at stick welding on one of them and turned out pretty good. Then it was on to the painting. The boards for the bottom had to be painted silver, and then we had to paint some more boards gold because that was going to help keep the walls up. The furniture was already gold colored, but it wasn't very nice looking, so they repainted them. And then it was time to do the training. The first Sabbath had come. We went to the school where this was being built. We went there for church, and at 2 o'clock, we started the training. Mr. Anderson started out by talking about the sanctuary, explaining it, and then it was my turn. I started the overview. And Mrs. Anderson had to translate for us, both Mr. Anderson and I. So, throughout the week, Mrs. Anderson had not been feeling very well. Not going to explain why, but she hadn't been feeling very well this Sabbath, and so we prayed and asked God to give her the strength to be able to translate for this day. And every once in a while, they would divide into groups to practice. And then they'd get back, I'd talk some more, explain the sanctuary a bit more, and then they'd divide up and start practicing more. Then there was the questions and discussions. They asked quite a few questions. One kid actually asked me where in the Bible it specifically stated that it took 6 months to build a sanctuary. That put me in some hot water because there is no verse saying that. You just have to figure out the dates.
So the lady in the flower dress is actually the president of GYC Costa Rica.
And then the next day, Sunday, we decided it's time to set this thing up for them to use. So it took us a while, but soon we figured out how we were going to fully set this thing up. Because you notice that some of the people are holding them up, and it's about head level. That's not the height that it was. It was going to be much higher. These are the walls. They were really hard to put together. They had little connectors, but we couldn't figure out how to put them in there. It was hard to slide them in, but we managed. Diego is the man who is standing right behind me, and he's trying to give us an idea on how to do it, but it was still hard. We finally got them put together, and then it was time to lift it up. And we discovered that if we did it out of sync, they would pop out of place, and we would have to do it all over again. So once we figured out how to do it in sync, we got it up, and we zip-tied it to the poles. That is what it looked like before the curtains were put up. The angels on the Ark of the Covenant, we actually took with us. Messiah Mansion let us take them, and in the flight they got slightly damaged. One of the wings on one of them had gotten chipped off on the end, and so we had to re-glue that on, fill it in, and then spray paint it. And then it was setting up pillars, and that's the Ark of the Covenant. Mr. Anderson and I are measuring the distance in between each one of them to figure out where they need to be, and then I'm standing on a table putting zip ties around them. That way they can't fall over. That was the entire team that we had that day. And without them, I don't think that sanctuary would have gotten built as fast as it was. And they did insist on a few group photos, I didn't want them, but they insisted. And so I got a little revenge. If you look closely at the bottom picture, you might see it. Mr. Anderson, once we had it all set up, then went on to do the training for the courtyard, the holy place, and the most holy place. And Mrs. Anderson translated for him again, with the help of God. The day that we left Diego and went to a nearby mission was a Wednesday. We went to San Jose and we walked around a bit. And as we were returning to the place where we had left our luggage, this man came up to Mr. Anderson and I and said, "I'm going to ask you something, but I don't want your money. Just hear me out." In English, pure English, good old English. And he went on to explain that he had been born in the United States, but his family was originally from Costa Rica, so he had returned there about 15 years ago. And while there, he had discovered the bad lifestyle. He fell onto drugs, alcohol, smoking. And 5 years ago, he finally came clean. He met God. But he didn't have any money. And he pointed at a nearby store and he said, "Would you go in there and buy me a loaf of bread, and I will eat it right here in front of you just to show how grateful I am?" We said, "Yeah, we can do that for you." So he went in there and we told him, "You can get whatever you want." He got a loaf of bread, 2 cans of sardines, I think, some orange juice. And afterwards, Mr. Anderson was talking with him, and he was actually able to give him some glow tracks. And so it was like really amazing to hear this man's story. Like, he told us that he had seen who his true friends were when he went to prison. Nobody. None of the other people who were drinking, doing drugs, smoking with him, they weren't his true friends. They did not help him. And he used to be a missionary there. On Thursday, we took a bus to the Caribbean side of Costa Rica. I can't pronounce their names very well. And wait, Wednesday we took the bus, right? Because Thursday we went to a nearby mission called Veronica's Place. It was owned by Seventh-day Adventists, and the lady who owned it, she had invited us here to help them with passing out glow tracts in a nearby village. But then they decided, well, they have 2 little kids. Maybe they'd like to see our farm. And so once we arrived, we were all sitting in a cool, shady area, and our husband picks up this long machete, walks over to a pile of green coconuts, and jabs one of them. He then cuts off the top, and I'm thinking, oh no, I don't like coconut. I do not like coconut, and he's going to give that thing to me. I'm not going to do very well with this. But he hands it to Mr. Anderson, and he gave one to everyone else, and then he hands one to me. And the Andersons, they're just quiet. They aren't going to say anything. So I decided, literally, they had literally saved me the entire trip. So then I decided, just out of courtesy, I'm going to drink it. So I drank that entire coconut and found it good. They even got pictures of it. Nah, I didn't. And then her husband took my coconut and sliced it in half and handed it back to me after chipping off a small piece and said, "Here's your own spoon." And so out of courtesy again, I took that little piece of coconut and dipped out some of the meat. It was slimy, it was gooey, but it was good. That night, he came to pick us up, and he drove us to the place where they were holding their meetings. And yucca, jackfruit, and something else. I can't remember what though. No, it wasn't plantain. No. No beans. No beans. They kept on trying to convince me, but they failed. It was a blessing to be with these people, even though the entire message, songs, everything was in Spanish. It was still really wonderful to be with other believers. And so, on Friday, we took a bus ride back to San Jose. And on Wednesday, we went to the beach. And I had an interesting experience there. Some of you have heard it. Yes, I'm going to tell it. So, but, oh man. But if you guys want to hear it, I'll tell it to you later. They're afraid they're going to get in trouble. They're afraid they're going to get in trouble if I tell you guys right now. But Friday we took a bus ride back. And Sabbath, we decided we were just going to relax. And then one of the men who had helped us with the sanctuary, Dennis, he is currently standing, let's see. He is in, so the lady in the pink shirt to the left of me, he is the one kneeling right beside Sean. He calls us up and says, "Would you guys like to take a tour of the nearby Seventh-day Adventist University?" So we agree, and earlier that day, we found out we didn't have anything for lunch. We didn't have any food for lunch. And we didn't tell Dennis this. So he took us to the university, and he showed us around a bit, and then he said, "Are you guys hungry? Would you like to come to my house for lunch?" We hadn't mentioned anything about having no food. We just decided we're going to leave it up to God. We went to his house, and we met his daughter there, and she had made rice, salad, and something else. I can't remember what, though. I don't know if it was beans. I'm not sure. But it was really amazing because we hadn't told anyone that we didn't have any food for lunch. And yet Dennis just decided to invite us to his house for lunch. That night was the night that we were supposed to return to the U.S. We got to the airport early. We were one of the first people at the gate. And while we were waiting there, I glanced behind me at the screen and I see flight delayed. Because the original flight was supposed to be like 12:05. Now it was delayed by an hour. Then it got delayed by another hour. Then it finally was delayed to 3:30. So Mrs. Anderson and the kids fell asleep. Mr. Anderson and I, we did some funny things. Took a picture of me being bald and sent it to my mom. I have it on my computer, but I didn't put it in this. I will show you guys, I will. And so then we finally got on our plane. We flew to Fort Lauderdale, and we find out that, we already knew this, but our connecting flight to Dallas was gone. They had already left. And we had been flying with Spirit Airlines, and they said, "We're just going to put you on a flight with United to Dallas." Well, to Houston, then Dallas. Well, we stayed with Mr. Anderson's family that night, and we went to the airport, and it's Sunday morning now, and while we're there, we're trying to get our bags checked in and everything, and we find out that Spirit had put everybody in different places. They said that Sean was traveling by himself, Anaya was traveling by himself, Mr. Anderson was by himself, Mrs. Anderson was by herself, I was by myself. And so while we're trying to sort this out, Mrs. Anderson's ticket gets deleted, voided. And then everybody else's tickets are voided. So we missed that flight, and so we spend the night with Mr. Anderson's family again. And finally, we get a flight back to Dallas. We landed there, and then it was time to go home. Return to OA. When we passed the Oklahoma border, I said, "Oklahoma land, you have never looked so beautiful." Thought I would never be saying that, but I did say that. And then we finally got back to OA, to my friends, to my family, and I started a large water fight. Of course, I didn't know that Mrs. Holland had said no water fights, but not my fault. There's actually something very interesting. While we were setting up, Mr. Anderson kept on noticing that I would sometimes disappear. That little boy in the yellow shirt, he was helping me disappear by playing with a tennis ball. And they had 2 soccer goals set up. So you can imagine what both he and I were doing. We were playing soccer with a tennis ball. Of course, it wasn't just work. We worked, but we also had fun. We went swimming at the beach. Mr. Anderson and I acted like little kids on a seesaw. He spanked me. He spanked me. We were at the beach, and Anaya and Sean were being disobedient, so Mr. Anderson told them, "If you don't start obeying, I'm going to bop you." I said, "I don't want to be bopped." As I'm heading for the water, I just feel something go whoop, bam! I turn around, and I'm holding my shoes, and I see Mr. Anderson running, so I took chase, and I got him. I got him with my shoe. But while we were at the place where the mission was, we went to a vegan restaurant. It was all vegan. Everything was vegan. Their cheese was vegan.
And you ate it.
I ate a little bit of it due to the incident from before. I wasn't very hungry. I took a few bites, and that was it. I couldn't eat anymore. I was not hungry at all. But while we were sitting at our table, it's an open-air restaurant. There's this tree, just like probably where this chair is, like right there. And there's movement on it. And it's like, what is going on there? And then it's leaf cutter ants. They're just climbing up that tree, don't know where they're getting their leaves, and then they're climbing right back down, and it's like, wow. That is just amazing. Just like watching, the sun has already gone down by now. And in Costa Rica, their sun seems to think that it just follows the early to rise, early to bed motto. It comes up before like 6 o'clock or something. Yeah, like I'm still asleep and the sun's already coming up. And then by like 5 something, it's already going to bed. It's like, yo, where are you going, man? And whoever said that Costa Rica was warm was not talking about the mountains in the morning. It was cold. Cold enough to see your breath. But in spite of all the obstacles we faced, we had fun there. We were able to get the training done in 2 days. And we had been told, you're not going to get it done in 2 weeks. It's going to take more than 2 weeks to train them. We got it done in 2 days. Dennis actually helped us with some of the stuff, and so did the guy right behind Diego, right next to the right of me. His name was Robert, and he was the one who did all the spray painting for us. And so, without him or Dennis, that project would have not gotten done when we did. We didn't have any tarps for the covering, and after we left, we had gotten it to a point where Diego could take over and finish it by himself. He sent the Andersons some pictures of the finished structure with tarps on it, but I forgot to put them in. Sorry, my bad. And then there's something interesting about this school. It's a bilingual school run by Seventh-day Adventists. But what I'm about to tell you is shocking. The school is Seventh-day Adventist, but only 10% of the students there are actually Seventh-day Adventist. The other 90% are not Seventh-day Adventist. And looking at the churches there, you can tell that the people there are really big on their religion. We went into a Catholic church in San Jose, and it was massive. We stood at the back of it, and it just extended for a long ways. You look up, and the ceiling is like high above you. It's like, that is really high up. They put a lot of work into their churches there. Yeah, they actually left some glow tracks in there. But throughout all the obstacles we had to face, throughout all the trials that we had, God helped us. When we couldn't find something, He was the one who helped us. Once Diego lost the key to the car again. This time it wasn't just his set of keys, it was just his one car key. And he has these 2 dogs. One's named Fluffy. He looks like a large Reuben, but he's not very friendly. He likes to, bite. And then he has another dog named Blackie, who is the complete opposite. According to his name, he is black, and he just loves to be petted. He just sits there looking up at you like, hey, I'm right here. Just come on, just pet me. Give me some attention, man. Come on, where's the attention? I'm waiting. And the day that we lost the car key, Fluffy had hurt his leg. He was walking around on 3 legs the day before he had hurt his leg. And Diego checked on him that morning to see if he could figure out what was wrong. Well, right after we prayed to find the car key, Diego goes over to Fluffy, and the car key is lying right under Fluffy's head. We still aren't sure how it got there, but it was there. God knew where it was, and Mr. Anderson actually said something that was fitting for the occasion. He said, sometimes God has to do some things just to hear you pray. Or something like that. It was something like that. So, all of these people here came to the training on Saturday and Sunday. And there was something that I saw there that I have never seen before. A fire for learning the sanctuary. They were wanting us to teach them. They wanted us to just teach them and say, all right, you can go. You can go give tours now. Dennis actually has helped build sanctuaries before. He has his own version, and he was actually telling Mr. Anderson, I think, he was like, just start letting me do tours. Just let me do tours. Just say that I'm ready. Just I know that I'm ready. He just wanted to give these tours. And it's like, that is just amazing. That I have never seen an enthusiasm like this before. I have never seen somebody say, just let me start doing tours right now. I want to go do the tours. And then some other things happened. We had some trouble with Diego, sadly. And that's why we went to the mission. Yes, Diego was getting stressed out with the job. It was a hard job. I understand that. There were problems along the way. We couldn't find some of the material, so we had to look for others. But I'm sure that God is still working with him. He's always working with us. Kind of like those leaf cutter ants are working with those leaves. They're always just working. They never stop. God never stops working either. He's always keeping us in his arms. Yes, he does allow some obstacles to come, but those are just to strengthen us. And when we fall, he's there to pick us up. So I'm hoping that the people in Costa Rica enjoy their sanctuary and that they are able to reach tons of people. This is actually, if I'm correct, the first sanctuary model that they have in Costa Rica. And so it was a really big blessing to do this for them. Thank you.
So Jonathan explained everything great. I just wanted to mention a couple things. Is that, it was the first one. And it was amazing, as Jonathan said, because all the people came and they just wanted to build. And it reminded us of the scriptures that they just came with the free will offerings and they just built. And they were just so enthusiastic to build. The sanctuary, it has a tarp and everything for it now. But then while we were there, I think it was El Salvador? Was it El Salvador? El Salvador and Colombia and Nicaragua, I think as well. I think all of them. They somehow, they heard about it and they were communicating with their conference presidents as well. And they want one as well. So hopefully the ministry, that's going to be going, that sanctuary right there will be going to the Union in Costa Rica. And that one there that you see set up is actually set up inside the school at the Adventist church. So like Jonathan said, 90% of them are not Adventists, so they'll get to be able to see that message for the very first time. And one thing that Dennis had said and Diego said about you was that Jonathan should be a preacher one day, because and Jonathan has learned the overview before. He's forgotten some of it. He rehearsed some of it prior to it again, trying to refresh himself about it. But when he got there, he speaks with an authority. He was able to train over 20 people, the president of the GYC in Costa Rica, and among others. One of them was 15 years old, and he drove out there all by himself just to learn about the sanctuary. Took a bus, sorry. But he got transportation out there all by himself. And this is what Jonathan was saying, how eager they were to hear the message. And Jonathan was able to not be taught the sanctuary, but to train other people in the sanctuary message. And he speaks with an authority. It just has that authority type presence to it, I guess you might say. but I just wanted to bring that up, and that's it. And oh, and one other thing is, it was nice that he got to go because Jonathan needs to see a world, as Pastor told me this, he needs to see a world other than pizza. So, and so he did. It was very difficult for us to find food. I'm not going to go into why. We had to eat out almost every day. The food was not provided for us. It was not there. And that's why we had a hard time with the Sabbath. For the life of us, we could not get food. And it was very hard because of the transportation. We had to go from one side of the country to the other. So we spent a lot of time traveling, 5 hours on a bus, no bathroom break, those types of things. And we were trying to get lunch for Sabbath, and we couldn't. So we were like, I guess we're going to fast because we didn't know what to do. We didn't want to go out and buy. And I understand there's emergency situations and everything, but we just didn't want to go out to the store and buy any food. So we said, okay, God will somehow, help us not to be hungry for the lunch. And that's when he said, and then Dennis all of a sudden calls up and says, hey, I got lunch for you. And he didn't even know that we were stuck or anything. So that was a wonderful thing. Oh, there's it with the cover and everything. So you can look up, and it has the colors of the red, blue, purple inside. And you go inside, and you can see it above you. And it has the most holy curtain, and the holy curtain, and then the brown. And so John got to eat the coconut, and it was something he got to learn, eating coconut, yucca, jackfruit, and I forget what it was, but it was something else. No, maybe it was aki. Yeah. Yeah, so it was good preparation for him in Belize because we kind of weaned him into it because he didn't have to go full-fledged, just all different kinds of food. But when he gets to Belize, he's going to have to probably go all in.
That's the coconut.
Yeah.
You can tell from my face that it's like, this is really good, surprisingly. Like, it was really good. And then while we also had a few fun times. Like, one was Sean. He was like, oh man, y'all are gonna find this picture just so adorable. It's just like 100% adorable. So this was at the place where we were staying. The mission actually owned it, if it will come up, but Sean figured out how to live. Like, I told you, he figured out how to live the life. He was like, yep. I told him, dude, that's my hammock. You're in my hammock, man. He wouldn't get out. He stayed there. And so, yeah, we had a lot of fun times. And we also ran into some of the obstacles, but still, it was a really big blessing. And that is it. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you that we were able to reach the people in Costa Rica for you. Thank you that we were able to help them build a sanctuary for their own use, to spread your word and your love. Please be with them as they travel around, and please be with all the people who we trained, that they may do it for your honor and your glory. Please be with everyone as they go on the music trip and on the mission trip. In Jesus' name, amen. And for those of you who would like to see the picture of Meatball, you can come up here.